never claimed to be a comedian, but I did find a couple jokes. I know some of you guys probably only tuned in for this portion. No offense to our two guests, but just to warm you up a little bit, I don't have these memorized, right? So the rotation of the Earth really makes my day. Just wanted to start off by saying that. And yeah, so not any laughs there unless you guys are on mute. I thought about going on an all almond diet, but that's just nuts. And
you got it. You got something.
Oh, that's good. Did you know the first French fries weren't actually cooked in France? They were cooked in Greece.
Nice.
Yeah. Yep. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, you're getting laughs from the audience. So someone said you'll make a great grandpa one day with these jokes, which I think is
thanks,
true.
Dina.
That's true. Awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody to episode 10. Can you believe we're already at episode 10 of the Adapt and Overcome webinar series? We're so excited that you're all here tuning in with us today. I'm Emily. I'm the VP of Strategy here at Alt RPO. I work with John and Sean, our amazing hosts, and they're going to facilitate a panel-style discussion with our guest panelists today. As I said before, their LinkedIn profiles are in the chat, so feel free to look them up at the end of the webinar as we're going. In today's episode, we're going to focus, as we have been doing, on organizational transformation in the wake of this pandemic that we're all in together. If you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A box. That way we can keep track of them and they don't get lost in the chat. If you have any tips, resources, books, ideas, things that you want to just contribute into the conversation, please put those in the chat. We love seeing those and pulling your ideas and resources from them. So keep the questions coming as we go. We really love hearing what you guys are looking for and are interested in. And without further ado, I'll introduce our host. So Sean is the CEO of Alt RPO. We are a team building and facilitation company with a 100% remote team. Prior to leading Alt RPO, Sean took part in various startups focused on human performance, and he leverages his experience as a Navy SEAL to bring a unique perspective to the current challenges that we're all facing. John is our facilitation Jedi here at Alt RPO. He's a master facilitator who focuses on team building and process improvement. John has conducted hundreds of workshops, and he leverages his experience as an innovation team leader in the U.S. Navy to help shift teams to collective and collaborative thinking. So John and Sean, take it away.
Awesome. So before we introduce Dr. Macaulay, and then we'll go over to Beau, who will introduce themselves, I wanted to quickly say that if you guys haven't actually watched her TEDx talk, you definitely should. We'll throw it in the comment section, and then we'll put it in the weekly wrap-up so that you guys have that as a resource. I see John McCaskill is tuned in right now as the support of her. We just had him on as well, and so now we want the same type of diversity in conversation, which is why we have this panel set up for you guys today. So without further ado, Dr. Macaulay, if you could take it away, introduce yourself, and then we'll go to Beau.
Sure. I recently retired from the Air Force after 20 years as a pilot was my main career field. However, I also spent some time with leadership and also in the academic space, earning my Ph.D. Really, when I went back, when the Air Force sent me to get my degree, I wanted to focus on a struggle that I had in my own personal life, which was how to sustain and even accelerate my professional success without having to sacrifice myself and in particular, my health and relationships along the journey. And so I went out to sought out how do we build the most effective human weapon system to execute the military mission. And with that, I really decided the aspect that we were missing in the military was mental skills training. And, we can train three things as human beings: our body, our craft, our mind. And so that was a wake-up call for me that we got the body and craft piece, but the mind was the gap. So that's really where I focused my research. and then my work within the military as a commander and then a special operations consultant. And now I do that independently outside the Air Force, consulting with corporate America, DoD, DOJ. And then also I have a partnership with Compete to Create, which is a company founded by Dr. Michael Gervais, who's a high performance sports psychologist, and Coach Pete Carroll of the Seattle Seahawks. And we developed Warrior's Edge, which is a mindset training platform for high stress occupations. So I'm really excited to talk all about mindset, stress, and everything in between today.
All right, so I'm Beau Higgins here, 25 years in the Marine Corps, retired about 5 years ago. I've been with Amazon now for 3.5 years. I'm on Amazon's military affairs team. So what that means in a nutshell is that my team tries to stay engaged with everything that Amazon is doing that touches the military. Amazon's a little bit unique in that it's really like multiple companies built into one. AWS is kind of on its own logistics side. Amazon movies and music and devices are all different. We're trying to put a centralized function on top of that to kind of guide and focus how Amazon deals with the military community. In my team, there's 3 different pillars. We have a community engagement pillar, where we're kind of doing our marketing and branding toward the military, what VSOs and MSOs we engage with kind of falls in that pillar. We have a workforce development pillar, and that's really focused from point of hire onward. So, not only do we worry about hiring veterans and military spouses, but how do we make sure they're successful in their careers and get them to a point where they're promoting and doing well. So mentorship, training, learning and development, what can we do for veterans from that angle? And the third pillar is the one that I own, is talent acquisition. So my goal basically is to build out programs that can be kind of pushed down to the actual recruiting teams to build pipelines of veteran talent. I think, Amazon is known by most as being a company focused on logistics and operations. When I talk to veterans, I like to talk about, the menu of options that are available. No matter what your MOS, your NEC, no matter what your rank, somewhere in Amazon, there is a position for you. And I kind of view my role as being the guy that helps to build programs that can bring talent in across the spectrum of the military. Because veterans have done very well at Amazon once they kind of get in and over that initial transition hump. And great to be here today.
Excellent. Well, just from those introductions, I think we're going to have a pretty lively and interesting discussion because from both sides, it's completely relevant to what we're currently facing today. So we'll kick this off typically the way we kick it off. And Beau, maybe we'll key in on you first. As far as so COVID-19 happens, the pandemic goes down. What's the biggest adaptation your organization has made in the wake of that so far?
Yeah, it's been pretty impressive to watch. And, we say at Amazon, every day is day one, right? You have to approach it as a new day every day. And I think it's been very interesting to see the response from Amazon as they have adapted the workforce as a whole, right? So again, I worked remote beforehand, but now, the vast majority of folks, if you're an AWS employee or you're a corporate employee, you are now working from home. That is a major mindset change for us. And the ability to set that up very quickly with the technology, using AWS technology, was amazing to watch. And then in the field operations, obviously we still have, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees that are still working in the field sites. What did we do to change the processes every day to make them safer, to make them more efficient, make sure we could still get, prioritize different items, make sure we're only focused on essential goods and really focusing on the health and safety of those employees. The numbers we hear from Amazon that over 150 process changes have already been made as far as how we do things in the fulfillment centers, from just spacing folks out, using less workstations, automating more processes. Used to be every morning you're out to gather together and do that kind of stretching and stuff. That's all been changed. And every day, new things are coming out to improve that. So it's, again, I don't think we're done with the changes yet. We're seeing it happen every day. Things are getting, improving to focus on that safety aspect of things. I think the bigger thing, and we can talk about more later, certainly is what are going to be the effects afterwards. We have to go back to what is the new normal, And that's really the question I'm asking as a recruiter. Do we have to go back to being in the buildings to work, or can we do more remote things? And certainly, have to talk about that more as we go forward.
Yeah, I was actually just about to ask you, and we'll definitely come back to that question, which is, do you see these as, either Band-Aids to make it through the pandemic, or something that we circle back on and say, this is the new norm. It's more efficient this way. We can save more money this way, that type of thing.
I mean, from the remote work piece in particular, and I look at this primarily from a military spouse lens, right? We have a stated goal. We did Jeff Bezos with the White House back in 2016 and made a pledge to hire 25,000 veterans and military spouses. We've already gone beyond that, but one of the challenges we've had, particularly with military spouses, is most of them, not all, but many, want remote and transportable positions, right? Because their military spouse is going to be deploying, or they're PCSing all the time. And we didn't have a lot of roles that were virtual, and there wasn't much of an appetite for there to be virtual roles, to be candid. But I think, again, I'll hope, my hope is that every decision we make in Amazon is about data and metrics. If I can show, 3 months from now, whenever it may be, that, hey, productivity stayed the same, even though workers were, remote, it's an easy argument for say, hey, look, you need to open up these roles that can be opened up to provide more opportunities, primarily for our military spouses. And I think this is something that we're already having these conversations. I feel like it's going to happen. The data will have to prove it out. But I mean, it's hard to ignore that nobody's going into the office now. The daily functions are still happening. Do we need to have a massive physical footprint? I mean, cost alone wise, it has to be a big savings. So again, I think that's one of the really potentially true benefits for the military community to come out of what's going on in the current crisis.
Yeah, and it's interesting because as that adaptation's going on, I think, at least from what we're hearing and what we're seeing, you've got this other maybe problem that's getting layered in. And this really goes to Dr. Macaulay, is, the mental aspect, the mental health piece of it. And, anytime there's quick change or quick adaptation that's required, people go through different styles. So Dr. Macaulay, what are you seeing from your clients, the communities that you engage with as far as adaptation to the new normal?
I think the main question most individuals and organizations are asking themselves right now is, how do I move forward in an environment I did not create for myself? That's the uncertainty, because not only is it not an environment we chose at this moment, but there's a lot of unknowns in the future. And I think many organizations and individuals can look at it with two lenses. Is this an opportunity for creativity and innovation, or is this a threat to our livelihood? And obviously, whichever way you choose, there's a different mindset that comes with it. And so I think those individuals and those companies that are really seeing it as an opportunity to think outside the box, to create more potential stability for their workforce and kind of change the dynamic of that. I think those are the ones that are going to thrive in this environment and continue on in the future. At the individual space, it is challenging to do that because we have an ancient brain that lives in this modern world full of overwhelm and stress. And a lot of times when we don't know things, we don't have certainties in our future, our brain tends to do what I call like mental time travel, and it will catastrophize for us, right? It'll fill in those blanks with things. And many times they're not really rooted in reality. They're more rooted in, maybe our ruminations over the past, our regrets, our worries, our expectations that pretty much were set when our normal existed. And so now we kind of have to adjust to that. And so it's really hard for a lot of people to kind of shape and wrap our mindset in a positive direction in these difficult times. One thing I will say is in the military, a lot of our lives are based in uncertainty, right? So I think some of us that spent time in that military life might be a little bit more prepared or have a foundational place to start from in dealing with this. And I think it's great what Amazon is doing for a lot of those military members, and then kind of bringing them into the fold of their organization and treating them like, hey, this uncertainty, this can be normal for us to feel like it's a struggle. But one thing with mindset that you have to focus on is, have you done difficult things in the past, right? Have you done hard things? Have you overcome and adapted, just maybe in a different environment or a different scenario? And I think most of us, if we think back, we have been able to do that. And so it's just shifting our mindset to this new and current crisis and knowing that we can do the same here. And I think those individuals and companies that can do that in kind of a more rapid fashion are setting themselves up for a better foundation for getting through the crisis.
I can add to that. You know, it's interesting to see as this COVID crisis has hit us. So, a lot of local states and a lot of just kind of governmental agencies have looked at Amazon for help to kind of say, hey, we don't do supply chain, we don't do these types of things. And a lot of the people that Amazon has sent to support local government and task force have been military. Because again, to your point, Dr. Macaulay, you know, this is what we do. We're used to like going in there, standing up an operations center. You know, comfort and crazy is what we do. It's been very interesting to see Amazon kind of saying, all right, I need someone to go support this. Do we have a military guy? Because I know y'all are gal, because we know you've done this before and you'd be great at it. So it's been really interesting to see how that's all played out, and that the military folks at Amazon are kind of taking a front and center role during this time of the unknown. I think that's something like just kind of made me think too. I mean, that's when I talk to folks about coming over to Amazon, there's a couple things that I look for. One is that idea of being comfortable in chaos, right? You know, if you've been used to operating independently, not a lot of guidance, you can do that. You can probably operate pretty well at Amazon. Another thing I often talk about is about having outside the box thinkers, right? You know, I joked about it that in the Marine Corps, you know, we always had leaders that said, you know, we want you to think outside the box on this problem. And you'd think outside the box and they would jam you back in that box as fast as they could. The military did not really want outside the box thinkers for the most part. At Amazon, they really do. And it was funny because I found myself early on, I'd like fire off a suggestion on things thinking nobody would listen, like, great idea, go do it. I'm like, oh, I didn't really want to do it. I was just giving an idea out there. But they really will empower you to try something. And everything at Amazon is about try things, do it faster, and do it at scale, faster and scale. And again, I think that adaptability is what's proven to be a key factor in our response to the COVID crisis, that we're not afraid to try new things. We're not afraid to rapidly shift things. And we've even had, I actually had a call from, I won't say which branch of the service, reached out and said, hey, can you tell us how you're adjusting your logistics, you know, platform that quickly? So, you know, switch your algorithms around to get the supplies you need there, because our system doesn't do it that well. So, you know, it's been fascinating to see how quickly Amazon's been able to do it and how others are relying on us and asking the military folks with Amazon kind of step up and lead. So very rewarding for me to kind of see all that happen.
That's awesome. So this goes along that same tangent, and this I'll go to Dr. Macaulay first with this. Is do you see that there's a distinct advantage, I'll say advantage, that you have over your peers because you're either one, in the military, or two, for you, Dr. Macaulay, that you have a background in mindfulness and meditation that allows you to cope with any of these blurred lines between working at home and seeing a computer screen for 12 to 14 hours a day type of thing? And if so, what exactly are those advantages that you see either in a military individual, or, I mean, this isn't a military webinar or anything, but I mean, 80% of the people on the screen right now are or were in the military, or were rather. So what are those advantages that you think that you might possess?
That's a great question. I think the important thing to remember when we're talking about like those backgrounds and experiences in the military, the way, like in the science of performance, our ability to perform in high stress environments, in rugged environments where uncertainty is a sure thing, is really related to our ability to normalize our response to stress. And stress is really a perceived emotion. A lot of people don't think of it that way, but we have the ability to change how we perceive, how we're interacting with our environment, and how we see our stress. And a lot of times in the military, we get inoculated to these high stress levels, which can help prepare us for operating and making split-second decisions in intense and high-pressure environments, which I think is a valuable skill for a lot of organizations. However, the one thing where I would say we have a little bit of a gap on the military side, and this is the one where I think when we're talking about mindfulness and meditation can help fill that to really make the holistic performer, especially in those intense environments, is our ability to not only be able to execute when our sympathetic system, our sympathetic nervous system is activated, but when our parasympathetic needs to be activated as well, right? That's our rest and recovery, our restoration space. And so what the skill sets of, mental training, mindfulness in particular gives us is it brings this awareness to ourselves so that we can become aware of our physiology, how it can be beneficial in some circumstances, and how we need to focus on the recovery aspect in others. And so I think that kind of together, right, the experience of these high stress environments is very valuable, but I think we're missing a small piece in that training, and that's really what our Warrior's Edge program has been developed to fill the gap, is that we need to also understand the parasympathetic side so that we can make the best decisions when we're in those high stress environments. And so I think to your point, right, like military members are prepared for this uncertainty and the COVID-19 crisis, but I still think that people struggle. And a lot of it is because they don't have that corresponding ability to also recognize the need for that. I like to say you have to slow down a little bit in order to actually speed up and accelerate your success in all environments. That's as a parent or as a professional. And so I know that that's a catch-22 for most people. They're like, wait, I need to slow down to be successful. But really, we need to focus on the ability to provide ourselves with self-care, recovery, to secure our own oxygen mask, is what I like to say, so that we can be our best to lead and serve others, both at home and in the workspace.
Can I say something really quick before you, Beau? I just want to chime in super fast, and then I'll kick it to you. There's stuff going on in the chat right now that I think is super valuable, and I want to, for those of you that aren't in the chat, I want to make sure that I say something. There are some tools and tips and tricks that the attendees are putting in based on what our guests are saying. And so I encourage you to provide your own inputs as we go through. So as you continue to listen to Beau or remember something that Dr. Macaulay said, please say, hey, I've got a great book, or I've got a great podcast, or this thing has helped me in my personal or professional life because of it. Please throw it in there. And again, we'll put it in the wrap up along with everything else. Sorry to cut you off, Beau. Over to you.
No worries at all. Again, it was kind of to piggyback off that, Dr. Macaulay, the thing that I've seen with veterans in particular, that's my lens at Amazon, obviously, the ones that aren't successful, it's because they do kind of just that. They get on board Amazon. It's a whole new culture, a whole new way of speaking, and they charge into it head first, and they kind of view it like, I call it like the deployment mindset. I'm just gonna put my head down and I'm gonna grind, and I can figure it out. And if I just keep grinding, I'll get there. And you won't get there. You have to stop, and you have to ask for help, because you don't know everything. And it's weird, because I think in the military, we become very independent, right? I knew how to get my orders cut. If I need a weapon, if I needed, whatever I needed to do, I knew how to make it happen. All of a sudden, I'm in this civilian workspace. I'm dependent on others. I don't like to admit that I'm dependent, because that shows I'm weak. And veterans are like, I don't need help. I can do it. And they can't. So to your point, you need to take a knee, drink water, and ask for help. If you ask for help at Amazon, they will give it to you. But nobody's going to come up to you and say, oh, looks like you're having a bad day. How can I help you out? It's just not that environment. But if you ask, people will bend over backwards to help you. But veterans just have I can do it. And eventually I'll embrace the suck, right? And you'll get there. It doesn't work that way. It's been interesting to watch that. Folks that can figure it out and take a step back, become more successful, and those that don't.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think what's really interesting, just listening to Beau and Dr. Macaulay speak back and forth, is, we've got two individuals from different organizations who, in both cases, are doing really well at adapting and overcoming. And I think from a tangible takeaway from this, we've said that the military often has a specific mindset that works really well in this kind of situation. Maybe we can just dive in and give, a kind of a hardcore takeaway here from both your experience, Beau, with what Amazon's done, and then Dr. Macaulay with what you've done, so that somebody that's listening can say, hey, I'm going to go implement that tomorrow. I'm going to try that with my team.
I mean, from an Amazon lens, you're talking about being successful. I think and you hear it in any transition course, it's about getting out there and networking and getting comfortable outside the walls. And I make the analogy all the time. Being in the military is like the Shawshank Redemption, right? You're somebody on the inside, and your rank gives you that authority. And you leave those walls, and you've lost all of that, and you lose your identity. So the sooner you can start to talk to people that are civilians, your high school friends, your college friends, 50 cups of coffee, just talk to people. That will help set you up for what you're getting into. Because if you hang on to what you were in the military, and many folks do, and try to use that same leadership style or same way of doing business, you're not going to be successful. So again, that's when I talk to people that are transitioning, and hope the sooner they start, the better. It's about getting comfortable in places that you're uncomfortable, meaning those civilian settings, and making those contacts. The more you can do that, and the more you can have a life that is not solely reliant on your persona of the military, the more likely you are going to be to succeed once you get into the civilian sector.
I love that. I think the end goal, the way that I see it, is we want to be able to sustain a level of performance across our life cycle. And as Beau was just mentioning, a lot of times, especially folks that are coming out of the military, it's that hustle and the charge. And the sheer fact of the matter is in the space of performance, that's just an unsustainable path. And it also is a pathway that rarely includes things like contentment and joy and happiness. And so where my work centers on is how do we really find spaces for individuals and organizations to kind of blend that journey so that they can be high performing for the long term and see the joy along the way. And I think it really comes back to three different things. The first is building awareness, right? Awareness of how we have an inner dialogue, and maybe that inner dialogue may not suit us well in all situations, especially when it's filled with uncertainty and high pressure. And I think mindfulness is a great tool for us to use to really cultivate and build that awareness. Because what mindfulness really is, and in case any of your listeners aren't familiar, it is a way of exercising our minds to be in the present moment. So if you think of your mind like an iPod, it's like sustaining the play button, which is not by the research where we spend most of our days. Actually, almost half of our waking moments are spent on the iPod, either in fast forward or rewind. And it's a very normal function of our brains to go into fast forward and plan for the future, or go and rewind and reflect on the past. However, when stress is applied or you're in a high intense situation, that iPod tends to go into the catastrophizing in the forward and the ruminating and regretting over the past. So that inner dialogue becomes non-productive in those moments. And so having an awareness of what's going on within our inner dialogue is really a foundational tool, and mindfulness gives us that. It's like the mental push-ups, right? To help cultivate our attention system to stay on the play button. So I think that's really one of the first aspects to get that sustainable performance piece. And then the second one is, going to the authenticity of who you are. And especially if you're in a uniform profession, who you are without that uniform on. And that can be a struggle for a lot of individuals, whether they're separating from that job or retiring, or they come back from a deployment, right? And they had this deployment identity, or even, with our first responders, they have a lot of that same type of tie to the identity of what they do. And where I teach it, it's really more about who you are. right? Once you figure out who you are, the what you do can kind of really be anything, and it can be amazing in a lot of different aspects. But you have to kind of take that step back and do a little bit of committed deep work to figure out who you are without that uniform on. And I think that's something that's vitally important for our military members to learn as they enter the service, so that even the doing and those jobs can be that much better during their careers. And so that deep dive into who you are is also vitally important to creating sustainability and thriving in uncertain environments. And then the last piece, and I know Beau alluded to this a little bit too, about, getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think it's about how you balance risk for yourself and for your organization, right? Right now, I think people need to be taking a little bit of risks in order to see this environment as an opportunity, right? Things changed after 9/11. Things changed when the internet, right? There have been a lot of moments in throughout the course of time where the paradigms have shifted. And this could be another one. We have yet to see exactly how our new normal is going to play out when we get to the other side. But I think taking some calculated risks and finding that comfort in the uncomfortable will also help us stretch both as individuals and organizations. And for some people at an individual level, that might be really embracing the fact that you're home with your family, right? Work and life have become very integrated. And so how can you really embrace that uncomfortableness of being with your family all the time, right? Like there's a lot of goodness to be had in that space. All those things that you always say, oh, I never have time to do this with my kids or do this with my spouse. Like, maybe those were just excuses before, right? Because you didn't want to take the risk to get uncomfortable in those ways. So I think both as individuals, with our personal life, with our professional life, and then as organizations, this can be an opportunity in that area.
Can I jump in really fast? As the only non-military background person on here, I love hearing this perspective because I live in Virginia Beach, so I'm surrounded by, people who are from that background and obviously on my team. But I think the things you guys are saying are also really applicable to anybody that's on here that's not from a military background, because as I'm listening, I've been involved with the startup world that has its own set of identity and has very much that hustle mindset. Hustle harder and, work harder, play later, like that whole kind of grind it out mentality. And it's really interesting listening to you guys talk, because I think there's a lot of correlation for a lot of people that are in significant uncertainty right now. I mean, we have 10 million people minimum right now out of work that are going to have to step out of what they've been used to, step out of the frameworks and the structures and get comfortable talking to people that they knew in high school and making new connections and stepping away from their old titles and all those things. So I think what you guys said is super powerful coming from the military side of things, but I just want to make that quick connection, which I think you were doing as well, Jannell, that I think it's really very applicable to everybody right now. And we're all, as you said, in the position to take a bit of risk to see this moment as an opportunity. So I think it's helpful feedback for all of us.
So I wanted to piggyback on that too. I really appreciate what she said about risk. So before I kick this question over to Beau, the question is, what are you doing to maintain your healthy balance and whatnot at home in this environment? And obviously we've alluded to it before, and I have an inkling of what Dr. Macaulay might say, but I would appreciate it if maybe you could go over your 4 L's or something like that somebody can take away, maybe put it on their wall behind them or something like that so that they can reflect on it. But Beau, you work for a massive machine. And so, one of the conversations we had in the last webinar was, these blurred lines of when does work end? Are people emailing me and calling me and whatnot super late at night so that, there's no end to work? I wake up at work and I go to sleep in work. And so a testament to the three of us, Sean, myself, and Emily, and the team behind the curtain, before I go to you, Beau, is this risk component, which, we didn't think we were going to do a webinar. And if you listen to our first webinar, second, third, fourth webinar, those are not, the guests were incredible, right? We've had some amazing people throughout this entire time, but we didn't know what the heck we were doing. We took a massive risk in doing something we had never done before, and we're iterating and getting better throughout the entire, I'll call it experiment. But we are, every type of workshop that I have ever given, whether it's strategy or team building or risk mitigation, anything that I've typically done personally, well, now I have to do it virtually. And I'm trying to figure out how to do that. And there is, in my opinion, no better way than trial by fire and try it. Figure out how to do it, take the risk, learn how to become comfortable with it, and kind of execute. So I know I meddled a couple thoughts together there. That was just my brain vomit for you all. But the question is, I'll go back to it. What are you doing to maintain a healthy balance in your life today, Beau?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working remotely now for since I've been with Amazon 3.5 years. So I think I'd already figured out how to do that pretty well previously. It was certainly a big challenge when I first started, especially because I'm East Coast. My whole team is West Coast. So that 3-hour time delay is a lot, right? So I would still get up early. I'd, go work out. I'd be working before anybody was there. And then I would stay on until my team got off at 9 o'clock at night, my time on the East Coast, and I didn't have a good work-life balance. And I think that's the same thing, you have to just build structure into your day, build breaks and just close the laptop at night. I mean, it's easier said than done, but I had to get to that point. And you have to have faith that your bosses are good with that. And really you're not just saying it to be, find time for yourself. I mean, they have to be genuine about it. And I think everyone at Amazon gets it. And they're pretty good with that. So they tell you to do it, and they're not going to make you do it, but you have to learn to do that. And I think I've taken that same, having structure my day. Now that I have, it's pretty crazy. I have 3 high school kids and 2 college kids that are home. So I have 5 kids in the house now. And my college kids especially aren't digging quarantine, and my high school kids are, I'm like, all right, here's the deal. This is the time you're getting up. You're going to have reset. You're getting outside and go do something. I mean, you have to have that structure for them to be successful. And I think that, because I've been kind of working remote, I was able to kind of bring the structure to them a little different, and you kind of learn from it over time. But I mean, that's the key to me, is just been, you have to know when to turn it off. You have to put the structure in there, because you can easily see it working yourself to death. And again, most of my team was working in the office up until recently. So I've been trying to be very sensitive and kind of, hey, you don't need to, if I say something at 5 a.m. on the East Coast, don't feel like you need to answer right away, and also giving back what my bosses tell to me, make sure my team hears that as well. And you give them the space that they need to be successful. Because again, we've all seen people that do burn themselves out. So it's a challenge. It takes practice. Again, I think, we've all been there, on the military side, you're on deployment and you're staying up, 48 hours in a row sometimes, and you can't even, figure out how to add. We've been there, and you can see people these days that are out about this whole thing and needing to step away. So it's hard. But the structure piece of it is the key to success, in my opinion.
As similar to the structure, I would use the word boundaries. I think we need to be establishing healthy boundaries, both for our work and our family life, both for our use of social media, how much we pay attention to the news. I think setting healthy boundaries across a lot of those inputs, right? These are all really stimuli that will increase our stress levels in different ways, but they can also be used as a benefit to decrease them. So I think creating those healthy boundaries is vitally important. The way that I kind of do that, I think we need to be taking care of ourselves from a psychological standpoint, from a physical standpoint. Socially, we need to maintain connection. I think using the term social distancing is doing us a disservice because of what it's doing to our mindset, right? Like it's more of a physical distancing that this environment has created, and we should maintain social connection, right? That's vitally important for all of us as human beings. It's part of the human condition. And how are we taking care of ourselves nutritionally with our sleep patterns? And I get it that not every day are we going to be perfect across all of those behaviors. That's just difficult. But can you wake up each morning and commit to something, right? So can you commit to like maybe one or two of those areas, focusing on them? Okay, like maybe it's sleep. I'm going to get more sleep, or I'm going to socially connect in a new way, call some friends I haven't connected with in a while, or spend some time. There's ways that we can pair our physical activity with our families. I know that we try to do that type of activity together here at home. I've got a 7-year-old and a 13-year-old, and boy and girl, so they're not playing together very well very much. So it's how do we find activities that are beneficial for the whole family. And the same thing with nutrition. I involve my kids in the cooking experience. I have them, my daughter cooks at least once a week, dinner for everybody, completely independent. I let her make mistakes, because if she doesn't make mistakes, right, and I'm there to pick her up and catch her every time, like, she's not going to learn as much. And so if we eat something with a little extra salt in it, like, so be it. But she's learning in the process. And same thing with my son, getting them all involved in that social connection. We meditate together and practice mindfulness. We go out on our walks and do that outside. Some people who are maybe interested in trying out mindfulness, there are a lot of great apps out there that can help you on that journey. Headspace is one I recommend, or Calm, or 10% Happier. However, the greatest app that exists is nature itself. And I'm not talking about an app you're going to look up on your phone that's called Nature. This is actually just being outside, and it's starting to warm up, and the outdoors are not closed, right? For many people, we can still actually get out and just breathe some fresh air. So taking advantage of those opportunities to really, like I said, secure your own oxygen mask. So then when you're on, and you have to be on, then you're ready. Right? You've prepared yourself from that recovery aspect. And I think that is something we cannot forget about. And I hear a lot of people in the workplace aren't setting healthy boundaries, to make sure that they're getting in that psychological, emotional, physical health, the nutritional health that they need to focus on.
That's super good, Dr. Macaulay. I appreciate what you said about the differentiating social and physical distancing. I've been thinking the same thing, and what a disservice it was to brand it as social distancing when people need to be socially connected right now. So great follow-up question to that from Jill. She said that she thrives in the changing chaos, but manages people that don't, and was asking, if both of you guys have any feedback on how to help employees pay attention to some of those mindfulness or rest and recovery things, how to help them adapt to the challenge of new work environments and workflow, any specific ideas or strategies that you guys have.
It's a tough one. I mean, again, my workforce has now moved to full-on remote mode. And there's a lot of crazy going on in people's families. Again, I've been doing it for a while. So I think it's, from a leadership perspective, it's being open to different ways of their communicating with us these days, understanding that meetings may have to change, that things are going to flex. I mean, they're trying to figure it out. I mean, they're stressed out more so than normal as well. So I think it's always, it's the leadership piece starts from the top. If you show that you're willing to knock off work at this time, and you're willing to take the time, and you're showing, picture you out. I mean, in our neighborhood, there's an Oscar Mayer Wienermobile that's parked in front of his house. I take a picture of it every day when I run by in the morning and post it, just to show, hey, I'm getting out there. This is what I'm doing. Make sure we're still laughing. Try to maintain that sense of normalcy, and having virtual happy hours, and to get them feeling engaged, because when I talk to them on one-on-ones, they are way more stressed out than usual and don't know it's gonna be over. There's so much uncertainty out there. Again, if you can just be relatable, I think, and try to be relatable and show that what you're doing and have been doing this for quite some time, it seems to make a difference. But everyone's a little different, obviously, on how they're dealing with it. That's what I've been trying to do.
I think leadership is vitally important in this type of a situation. And the two words I would use to help leaders are compassion and forgiveness during this time. First thing I think everybody needs to realize is that feeling a little hopeless, feeling overwhelmed is normal, right? We all feel it. Even anyone that says they've got it all together, like they are still also going to have moments of feeling like this is too big for them. And that is 100% normal. And so as a leader, I think that's the first thing we can do for the people under our leadership, is to let them know, like, hey, this is not a normal situation. So for us to feel like we're struggling, that is what's normal. And then secondly, help them find a space for compassion and forgiveness, because it's just going to continue to snowball if we don't find that space to say, hey, tomorrow, like today was not my good day, was not my best, right? Tomorrow's another day, and I'm going to start again. And I'm confident in who I am and what I'm capable of bringing to the table. And I know that I can be my best, right? I think that's that mental dialogue that we have to have with ourselves. A lot of times we put excess pressure if we put expectations on what we think our bosses want us to be doing, or they think we need to be perfect in these moments, or they are not going to be forgiving if we are not perfect. And so I think having an open dialogue, and I think it's the same with our kids, right? Our kids are struggling with a lot of these same frustrations and perfections with school, because school is different, right? It's not this homeschooling environment, it's public schools and at home now, and nobody knows really what they're doing. And so we need to offer some compassion and forgiveness along that journey, so that people don't get so tied up in the expectations that were set when things were normal, because that will really ruin our ability to stay present in the moment and focused on what we need to do, so that we can, be our best throughout this crisis and into the future.
Just as a follow-on to that, there's a tremendous amount of grief and disappointment I've observed as well in this season, because people have missed their college graduations, their high school senior year, their weddings, their funerals. There's so many things. And coming from the backgrounds that you guys have, where I'd assume with the length of military careers that you've had to deal with grief or disappointment or those kinds of things in a context where you didn't necessarily have like the time you might otherwise have to process it. Do you have any insights for people, especially people leading teams, where they're definitely dealing with that specific type of emotion, for how they can make space for that, or even for individuals?
I think the first thing is to understand that having all of these emotions, we just need to not push them away, right? That's kind of one of the worst things we can do in these environments. It's how do you embrace with the emotion, sit with the emotion, and then have healthy ways that you can process and move forward. And I think that where I say healthy ways, because there's different ways we can cope with all these emotions. There's maladaptive coping behaviors that lead us down, high risk behavior type actions, the substance abuse, the emotional overreactions we have with the people that we love most. And so, but we could also tend toward that positive coping, where we connect with others, where we use resources for self-care, right, to get us through. And so I think once the first thing is to not ignore the emotions or try to push them away, but like understand that that's part of who we are, and as human beings is to experience these emotions, and then show that forgiveness and compassion for ourselves and find positive ways to move forward. And then as a leader, like helping your team make space for using those resources. Like if you're expecting them to be on call, 24/7, because now we're in this virtual environment, you're not properly giving them space to say, hey, it's okay for me to go out for a 30-minute walk. Hey, it's okay for me to go play, some board games with my kids. I don't have the fear that like my boss is going to start calling or call a meeting at the last minute and expect me to be paying attention. Because I'll tell you what happens. And I was going to kind of save this for my last point, but I said it in my TED Talk. One of the most powerful moments in my life was when I was a leader and I thought I had all my stuff together, and I was giving my son a bath. He was 3 years old at the time, every night. And I thought I was like, I had it all going on, right? I was a leader all day, and then I was home with my family, and I was present with him to give him his bath. And there was one evening when I was bathing him where he literally stopped me, put his tiny hands on my cheeks, and looked up and just said, Mommy, why are you so sad? I really love you, Mommy. And it was right then and there that I realized how powerful our minds are, and how, even though I was physically present with him, I was mentally distracted and disengaged. And so the best gift we can give to ourselves today, for both our families and our work environments, is the ability to be present with what is right in front of us, right? When we're with our kids, we shouldn't be worried if our boss is going to be needing something on the phone. Or when we're with our workspace, we shouldn't necessarily have to be worried about, are we being a good parent in this moment? And so really cultivating that ability to be present, and as a leader, giving your folks space for that presence as well, I think will be extremely valuable.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think anyone that's listening, there's just tremendous value on all levels coming out of this discussion. One of the things that we've seen, and today it really hasn't changed, when we ask the polling question, the majority of the attendees are struggling with productivity. So Beau, from your standpoint, what is it that you're doing with your team, or what is it that Amazon's implemented that's really helping that productivity piece right now, given all the craziness that's around them?
Yeah, it's been interesting for us, obviously, because, while many industries have slowed down, ours is actually, we're like, it would be typically in the Christmas season, right? We're at peak, and we're at peak and beyond that. And maybe Amazon's a bad example, because I think we're just kind of used to that. I don't know that, and that maybe that'd be a good thing, but I think Amazon is just, we're used to having and operating at that level of speed. Doing it remotely has been a challenge. And I think the thing that has been most different is that people are understanding of that priorities have changed. So where maybe in the past that, if a paper was due on this thing, or your monthly report, or things that are usually important, to get things done, like the kind of I need to have this project management tool done, or kind of standard work, doesn't have you don't have to worry about that as much. It's like, hey, everything we do always is about the customer, but I think we've gone back to like thinking in simple terms of, what does the customer need the most right now? Everything else can wait. And that's kind of how we've been having those discussions with my team is, all right, I know I've asked you to do these things and they've been on the list for a while, but look, who's our customer? In this case, the military community, military spouse, whatever it may be, what's the most thing important to them? And what do we do in changing our normal work routine to adapt to whatever the customer needs the most? So I think, again, to your question, it's really that the routine has kind of gotten thrown out the window and not as important. And we've reprioritized what really is important, what we think at least is important to the customers, and kind of said, okay, we'll get back to that later, but for now, this is the priority, and let's focus on that. So it's been interesting to watch it happen.
Yeah, that's a great point with reprioritization. And, I think you alluded to it with some of the other comments that were shared with, focusing in on, you don't have to reply to me when I send you a message, right? So asynchronous communication versus synchronous. And I think that's a really challenging thing for both employees and leaders. So, if a leader's able to establish those bounds and say, hey, asynchronously, I'll send messages, and when you respond to them, that's okay. And if I need to get your attention, I'm going to do something specific, right? And you outline what that looks like on the front end. Just internally, we found that to be the best way to operate in a remote environment. So definitely appreciate your insight. Dr. Macaulay, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. If we back up a little bit about productivity and how we get to that productive place, it really relates to our attention systems and our ability to stay focused on an activity. And if you think of your attention system kind of like a flashlight, it can be laser focused at whatever's happening in your conscious experience, or it could be laser focused internally at our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And as I mentioned before, the research will tell us that about half of our waking moments where our flashlight and attention system is focused inward at those thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And so that's just like at face value, like half of your day, that you're awake. You are not paying attention to what's going on in front of you. That's when you read a page in a book and you get to the bottom and you think, I don't remember what I just read. Or you drive your car someplace and you don't even remember what roads you took to get there. So that's the mental hijacking that happens. And so that is like the kryptonite to our productivity really is that mind wandering concept. And unfortunately, that half of our day that we mind wander, the research also says we mind wander to unpleasant places, right? Stressful places and things that are not productive. So in order to really keep ourselves in that productive space, we need to be able to focus our attention system on the task at hand. Having prioritization is a great starting point for that, because then you have kind of a guide, right? But I think we also need those mental push-ups, right? That cultivating that skill, and really what mindfulness brings to us, to decrease the amount of that mind wandering so that we can stay on that play button for longer periods of time. And we can really focus on that ongoing task or activity without having the unintentional off-task thoughts. Because that's really the thing about lost time and our inefficiencies, is that many times it will happen for a couple minutes before we even realize, right, that our minds have taken us elsewhere. And so if you have a tasker in front of you and say it's a performance report, and it normally takes you 2 hours to complete, really about an hour of that time is distracted with like social media, or my phone made a sound, or someone walked in, or this or that, and all of those off-task thoughts keep us and prevent us from being productive in the moment. So there's different things we can do to increase that productivity. Like the first one is, if you're doing something on your computer, shut off your email, right? Because if you have your email going every time, even if you don't answer the email, just having it come in and seeing who it's from will start your mind on a trail of off-task thoughts. And so you can do certain things to kind of make yourself more productive. So instead of needing this 8-hour day, you can actually get more things done if you stay focused and productive in those 4 hours, which then just opens up white space to be more productive on your family side while we're kind of doing this work-life integration.
Oh, that's great. And we're just getting to the top of the hour. So typically at this point, we'll jump into the lightning round. Before we do, I just want to say thank you. This has been just an awesome conversation back and forth. For our panelists and the people that'll be listening and rewatching it later on, I think they're going to get massive value. I know they're going to get massive value out of this. And also want to announce that this Friday, 1 p.m., we're hosting a virtual workshop. It's free. It's obviously it's virtual, given our current situation. But it's focused on mental resilience. And it's just a fun way to kind of look inside and say, what are those things that I can control right now? And let me focus and lean in on those versus thinking about all this extraneous stuff. And I think today's conversation really revolved a lot around that. So thank you to the panelists. Thank you for the great questions to the attendees. And with that, we're going to jump into the last question, which is, and we'll start with Beau, what's the one thing that you want our attendees to walk away with today?
I guess I would phrase it from my day job and what I do. And really this could apply not to just veterans, but for anyone interested in Amazon. If you're interested in Amazon, if the conversation today hasn't scared you away about how crazy it is, you know, I'm here to help. I'm here to be a resource. I think a lot of people are fascinated by the culture of Amazon and what goes on there. If you are interested, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to help. Like I said before, you know, whether it's military or non-military, you know, if you have a job name, job number, and a resume, I'm happy to help. I get no better satisfaction than helping someone find a job, especially right now with so much uncertainty going on. I'm getting a lot of my friends that have been furloughed or laid off that are coming to me and asking for help. And again, I'm in a position where I can help, and I enjoy doing it. So really, my plug is if you do need help, or you or a friend of yours needs help, I don't care if you're a veteran, military spouse or not, reach out to me, and if I can be of any assistance, I'm happy.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And Dr. Macaulay, I know you probably hit on it already, but I'll turn it back to you. What's that one takeaway?
The last thing I want to just leave everyone with is this confidence that we're all stronger than we think, to kind of face these moments. They are not too big for us. We have the skills that we need. There are definitely things we can do to kind of help build a stronger foundation, as we've discussed in this entire webinar. But don't underestimate your ability to be strong as an individual, as a leader. And when I say leader, I mean both at home with your family and with your employees, to kind of model the behaviors and the confidence that we all need to kind of work together to get through this. I really like what Beau was saying. I mean, a lot of this is about leaning on each other in a social way with the physical distancing to get through this. And so the last offer that I'd like to just make you aware of is we do have the Warrior's Edge digital training. We're offering it for free right now to any COVID-19 first responders. That is our new front line. And so we want to equip them with mental skill sets to excel in that environment. So we're offering it for free, and then at a heavily discounted rate for anyone else that really just wants to sharpen their mind right now. So I can put some information out about that, share it with your folks, or anyone can reach out to me. This has been an awesome opportunity to speak with you guys today.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And everybody stay safe and have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.
Everyone.
Take care. And Dr. Macaulay and Beau, if you could just hang out for